Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome TCEA President Carrie Murphy.
Well, good morning. I am so glad to see that you are still here and that you are believing that by noon we'll be clear, the roads be clear, and they'll be safer. So that's what I keep telling my group. I hope that you've had an awesome week. I hope that your brain is heavy, but for a good thing. Just to let you know, we had of registered attenders 8,466. Wow, yes. Exhibitors 2,852 for a total of 11,318. That is pretty awesome, isn't it? And I want to thank Merritt Threadgill, her steering committee, and all the people that supported her district to put on such an exciting event for us. I think one of the, let's give them a round of applause. Sorry, I didn't pause long enough on that one. They deserve it. I know they're exhausted and they're going to sleep all weekend, aren't you? I know that good things have happened because as I went to dinner last night and as I walked through the hotel, it was great to hear teachers and administrators talking about how they're going to go back and change a few things, how they were going to utilize something they learned in their classroom. And to me, that's what really matters, is coming here and gaining knowledge and skills is one thing, but taking it back and applying it. And I hope you do that. I do have a few little announcements for you. First of all, we're asking that you go into the app and any of the sessions you went to, be sure you rate them because your feedback is extremely important. We always want to improve the quality of what we offer to you. And to do that, when you go into the app, you choose the session and go to actions and there's a place for rating it. You will also get a survey at the end of this in an email, and we ask that you please respond to that as of what you would like to see in the future, or just any of your input is quite valuable to us. The third thing I want to tell you about is we've had some questions about how to get a certificate. If you need a certificate from your district, you can go down to the membership booth and see Elke. Elke will be happy to help you in obtaining that document that you might need. And the last announcement I have is if you're missing anything, like a phone, an iPod, a wedding ring, maybe you lost it last night, or I'm not saying, but then you can go to registration in Ballroom A. We're going to punish you. You got to walk pretty far to do it. Or you can call the TCEA office, and the number is forwarded there, and they can let you know if that item that you're missing might be there. Every year at our Friday general session, per the bylaws, we have a business meeting with our membership. And so I'm going to call that meeting to order. You as the membership, you are here. And I'm inviting David Jacobson, Vice President of Records and Finance, to come and give us a report.
Okay, I'm good. I'm very excited that you all stayed to the very end of convention just to hear the finance report, so I won't keep you waiting. Thanks to the talented and hardworking TCEA staff, the dedicated board of directors, SIG officers, partners, sponsors, our over 14,000 members, including all of you here today, and the schools, districts, and organizations for which you work, I'm pleased to tell you that TCEA is in a very strong financial position. TCEA has a $3.5 million budget with $2.3 million additional set aside in investments. That's worth clapping for. Our investments continue to show slow but steady growth. Once again, our revenue exceeds expectations and our expenses are below budget. We've outgrown our current building in Austin and have found a new home that will allow us to provide expanded services to our members. The new building will feature meeting space for up to 350 people and a high-speed network. along with additional office space for our staff and other events. We will close on the new building very soon, so be watching for photos as we renovate our new home. It's a very exciting time to be a member of TCEA. And speaking of being a TCEA member, remember that every one of you who registered convention is now a member of TCEA. We hope you take full advantage of your membership and all the benefits and opportunities it provides. Thank you.
Thank you, David. This past year, I've had the honor to serve with some amazing people, and I want to take a second to recognize them. They are your area directors and your officers of TCEA. From Area 1, Dr. Pat Abrego. Area 2, Holly Horton. Area 3, David Luna. Area 4, Tom Brawley. Area 5, Susie Brooks. Area 6, Ronnie Gonzalez. Area 7, Scott Floyd. Area 8, David Phillips. Area 9, Don Sewell. Area 10, Cheryl McDonald. Area 11, Dwight Goodwin. Area 12, Brian Dole. No, excuse me, Area 12, Luann Hughes. I didn't look on my sheet, and she's not with us this morning. Area 13, Brian Dole. Area 14, Christy Kate. Area 15, Sandy Sawyer. Area 16 is Debbie Boyer, and she had a family emergency this morning. Area 17, Dr. Kathy Morton. Area 18, Debbie Dodds. Area 19, Brian Grenier. Area 20, Dr. Roland Rios. As President-elect, Candace Threadgill. Past President, Dr. Carla Burkholder. As Vice President, Convention, Merritt Threadgill. Vice President, Convention-elect is Bill Lewis. Vice President, Member Services, Cindy Galt. And Vice President, Records and Finance, David Jacobson. And one other person, our historian, he's busy tearing down with the tech crew, Lee Sleeper. That's your board. I also want to thank the TCEA staff. They're not in here, or very few of them are in here, but they do an awesome job. They're the wonderful people that answer the phones for you. Oh, there is Monica sitting in front of me, sorry. Monica Martinez, and there's, if you see them, please thank them. They work tirelessly. They are always on top of it, and they take care of not only your needs, but the board's needs, which are important. So I appreciate what you do for us. Please welcome to the stage Merritt Threadgill.
Hi, I have the honor of introducing the keynote today, Mr. John Quinones. John Quinones has won 7 Emmy Awards, the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, and was named one of the 25 most influential Hispanics in America by the Smithsonian. He has been with ABC News for nearly 30 years, traveling the world and working with other respected journalists like Peter Jennings and Diane Sawyer. He is a correspondent and anchor for Primetime in 2020, and also as the host of the popular show, What Would You Do? Please help me welcome Mr. John Quinones.
All right. Hello, hello. Good to be here. Thank you, Merritt. What a great turnout considering the weather. Here I was, I thought I was leaving New York. I said, I'm going to go for some warm Texas sunshine. And I'm out there slipping and sliding in the ice. Good to be here. Yes, I do that show, What Would You Do? You're familiar with it, right? So you have been warned, you know. We can put those cameras anywhere. So if the person next to you passes out and you step over them to go get some Starbucks, you're going to have me to talk to. It's great to be back home. I was born and raised in San Antonio, just down the road from here. It's good to be back. And, thank you, Mayor, for pronouncing Quiñones so well. She does that very well. I mean, she was practicing and practicing. Because even my name is not easy to pronounce. It's been massacred by even people at ABC television. But the worst was, I was in San Antonio for Fiesta Week. You know Fiesta Week in San Antonio. It's a fun celebration where I was the Grand Marshal of the River Parade. And after the parade, I was going through the crowds in little old San Antonio. And a lot of tequila is drunk at this 10-day, 2-week celebration. And a young woman who didn't speak English, blonde, blue hair, didn't speak Spanish. She had blonde, blue eyes, and clearly had had too many tequilas. Ran up to me. She said, "You're that guy on television. I love watching you. Me and the family watch What Would You Do? I love you on 2020. Can I take a picture with you, Mr. Cojones?" Well, I didn't know whether to be insulted or, feel good about that. So I decided I would be complimented by that. So I said, "That's right, I'm Mr. Cojones to you." I'm sure that during your 5-day conference here, you have heard all about, you've learned, and you've discussed, and you've analyzed all the latest gizmos and the technologies to better educate our children in America's classrooms. Thank God for that, because, it is just mind-boggling, the access we now have that I never had going to school, the access to new technologies. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here to remind you to never lose sight of the human connection with your students. Never pass up the opportunity to be a positive role model for your children, for your students in the classroom, for those younger staffers at your corporations. John Quincy Adams has a quote that I love. He said, "If you can inspire people to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more, then you are a leader." And I think that's what America needs right now more than anything. Strong leaders, positive role models to build a healthier, better educated, and of course more compassionate society. And I think I'm kind of uniquely qualified to talk about that because of where I've come from. A lot of people who watch me on television up there with Diane Sawyer and Barbara Walters and George Stephanopoulos and the great people of ABC News have no idea the long, hard struggle that it took to get here. As I mentioned, I was born in San Antonio, but I was born in the barrios, in the poor neighborhoods. You know how some people say, we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor. We knew we were poor. We had an old black and white television in the back of the house, and we saw how the other side lived. My dad was a janitor at the high school where I went, and my mother used to clean houses for a living. My dad, in fact, my father could not read nor write. I spoke no English when I went to the first grade. This was before bilingual education and before, I didn't go to kindergarten or preschool. I went straight to the first grade at 6 years old. And I'll never forget that first day in class, in Mrs. Gregory's class. She spoke no Spanish, I spoke no English, and I'm sitting there dumbfounded, wondering what we're doing. And at 10 in the morning, the recess bell rings, right? And so the kids all run out to the playground. Where does little Juanito Quiñones go? I walked home. I lived 2 blocks from school. And I got home, and my mother Maria, God rest her soul, is, Juanito, ¿qué pasó? What are you doing here? I said, se acabó. It's over, Mom. I love school. I think this is going to work out. 2 hours and you're done. She dragged me back by my ear. My mom was big on education and forced me to sit there. And I learned English eventually. I was thrown into it and I learned it. But we were struggling. I used to shine shoes on Guadalupe Street in San Antonio with my cousin Joey when I was 8 years old. And we would go to all the bars, the cantinas on Guadalupe Street, because the drunk guys didn't know how much they were tipping you. And it went well until a gang jumped us on the way home at midnight one night, and that was the end. They took my rags and my earnings, and that was the end of my shoe shining career. When I was 13, my dad was laid off from work, and we did what a lot of Hispanic families in South Texas did back then. We joined a caravan of migrant farm workers, and we journeyed for 3 days in the back of a truck, my 2 sisters, my parents, and I, to Northport, Michigan, which is north of Traverse City, Michigan, to pick cherries because we had to work together as a family. I remember trying to fill a bucket of cherries for 75 cents a bucket would take for me like an hour or two. And then we followed the crops down to Ohio, outside of Toledo, where we harvested tomatoes for 35 cents a bushel. And I was like a champion tomato picker. I did 100 bushels a day. So, $35 contributing to the family. And it taught me so much about the value of the family coming together in times of need like that. And it also taught me lessons about life. I mean, my father looking down at me at 6 in the morning when I was on my knees on the cold, hard, wet ground, looking at a row of tomato plants that for our young 13-year-old boy's eyes seemed like they went on for miles and miles. And my father, Bruno, looking and saying to me, "Johnny, do you want to do this for the rest of your life, or do you want to get an education?" It was a no-brainer, of course. But had I not picked tomatoes, I would have not known that that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I had a dream. I wanted to be a journalist. I used to watch Geraldo Rivera on 2020. The only one with a Hispanic last name on national television. And I wanted to, so badly to someday basically do what I'm doing today. But the odds were stacked against me. Every time in my junior high school that I would speak to my teacher, and this is why I'm glad that I'm speaking to teachers, I would talk to the counselors and ask them, what do I need to do? What courses do I have to take to go to college? And they would say, well, that's really well and good, John, but we think you should try metal shop or wood shop or auto mechanics. Not that there's anything wrong with those wonderful trades. A lot of people make a good, hard living with working like that, but I wanted to go to college. And those counselors, because I was a Hispanic kid in a very 100% Hispanic student body, they expected that all of us really had no chance of ever making it. And that's one thing I've learned about what would you do. We all judge by appearances, and we're often wrong in our assumptions. They saw me as just another Mexican kid whose father is a janitor, never known when his family's ever gone to college. Probably not a good prospect for college material. But thank God, I just kept working. And when my mother just pushed and pushed, she said, don't worry about the fact that you take bean and tortilla tacos for lunch every day while the other kids have bologna, fancy bologna, and cheese sandwiches on white bread. Don't worry about that. You're just as good. Don't worry the fact that you have to wear the same clothes every other day, but they're clean clothes. You're just as good as the kids who live on the north side of town. So I would work on my accent because I knew if I wanted to be a broadcaster like Geraldo, I had to get rid of my heavy Mexican accent. I couldn't say shoes or shirt. In Spanish, there is no SH sound. So I would say choose and shirt, and people would make fun of me. And I thought the only way I'm going to get rid of this is by getting into a drama class and standing in front of a stage and forcing myself to enunciate. And believe it or not, I was really shy, but this was during the Civil Rights Movement. And, Martin Luther King had a saying. He said, take that first step. You don't have to see the entire staircase. Just take that first step. So I went out and I auditioned for the role of Romeo in Romeo and Juliet for the high school play. And guess what? I got it. And the good news is that I got to kiss Juliet, this really hot girl. The bad news, in a very macho Mexican school, I had to wear leotards on stage. Thank God this is before YouTube, because that video would still be around. But it forced me to learn to enunciate and to speak to the back of the audience, of the auditorium. And then, it's funny how life is when you just set your mind on achieving that dream and not taking no for an answer, which is a message that I give to colleges throughout the country. Don't listen to the negative messages that society often gives us, often more so to people of color. When you start ignoring that, the breaks, the heroes you meet along the way. My first one was, of course, my parents, but then my English teacher in high school at Brackenridge High School, Mrs. Gutierrez, who said, "John, you're a great writer. I love your essays. Have you thought about journalism?" Of course I had, but she said, "You can write for the high school newspaper, the Brackenridge Times." So I went and I talked to the teacher who ran the newspaper, and I was hired as chief of editorials. So I've been a reporter since I was 14, and I was doing big investigative projects like, why are the teachers parking in the students' parking spaces, Tonight we go undercover. So I started writing then, and then along came another hero, and a hero doesn't have to be a human being. It can be a government program. In my case, it was Upward Bound. I don't know if you know Upward Bound, but it was a war on poverty program. The U.S. government thought under Kennedy and Johnson administrations, the theory was that the only way out of poverty was through education. What a thought, huh? And they would give us, a few select of us, 10 from every high school in the inner cities, a chance to study on Saturday mornings math, biology, and English classes, so that we would supplement whatever we weren't learning in our public schools. I did that in the 10th grade of my high school career and the 11th grade of my high school career. And then every summer, I would get to live on a college campus for 6 weeks. And we actually lived at Texas State University, which is about half an hour from here. It just got us acclimated to the thought, maybe I can go to college someday. And I wouldn't be standing here today if it had not been for Upward Bound. So along the way, those little helping hands helped this kid from the barrio start to achieve his dreams. I got into St. Mary's University in San Antonio, and then, I had 3 jobs when I was at St. Mary's, because, we had no money. How was I going to pay? So I had loans and grants, and I worked at the geology department sorting rocks at my university. I worked in the cafeteria washing dishes, and then at night, and I got to be careful how I say this, because, a Hispanic, I said, I delivered drugs, and everybody assumes the worst, I delivered drugs for Blanco pharmacies to little old ladies who needed their medication, all right? And I was in a beat-up Volkswagen delivering medicine to people's houses. But the owner of that drugstore found out that I was interested in broadcasting. Again, another hero steps in. He would hear me in the bathroom at the pharmacy reading stuff out loud, working on my accent, right? And he said, John, you love broadcasting. I want to be a broadcaster. I was 18 years old, 18, 19. He said, well, I know the general manager at a radio station here in San Antonio, and they're looking for interns, and I will introduce you to them. And he did, and the great news, it was a radio station. The bad news is a country music station. I love country music now. I love it now. But back then, I was 18, 19, I liked rock music. I had a band called Free Nation. I would sing songs by Three Dog Night and Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. But it was a job. And guess what? It paid $2 an hour. And what was that job at the KKYX, Kicks Radio in San Antonio? You're from Texas, you understand this, those of you who are from Texas. The disc jockeys at this radio station had horses that they would use in rodeos and parades and public appearances. Every DJ at the station. My job for $2 an hour, my first job in broadcasting, was to feed the horses in the back of the studios. I mean, you talk about perseverance and working on the dream. I would do that, and then at night, at midnight, I would go into the studios and work on my delivery. So I would record whatever I could at midnight in the studio and then play it back, right? To listen to see whether my voice was getting any better. And it was great, but the only problem was that at midnight there was no one there to criticize my work except the janitor, and his name was Pablo. So, so I would say, Pablo, what do you think? How does it sound? So I'd play it back for him and go, más o menos, more or less, it sounds okay. And then they let me do the news the first thing I did on broadcast, on the air, was a commercial tag. I would, there's some big nationally produced commercial, and I would make it a local commercial by saying something at the end for 5 seconds. So they let me go, it would be some medicine that was out, and then I got to say this for the first time on radio. Now available at Walgreens. I was so proud, I would call my aunts and my tios and uncle. You got to listen at 1:12 this afternoon, but don't blink because you'll miss it. And then they let me do the news on the air at Monday morning, between 1 and 4 in the morning. We had 4 listeners, my mother, my father, and my 2 sisters. But slowly, I labored, and slowly I climbed. You don't want to go on the air on ABC News and start there and mess up. You want to mess up at a little country music station on the outskirts of San Antonio, which I did, and I made mistakes, but I learned also. And then I got a job in Houston at a radio station. And then I tried to get into television, but no one would hire me. And back then, everyone had one Hispanic reporter on the air. The quota had been met, and there was no room for one more. So I couldn't for the life of me get into television, even though I had a degree from St. Mary's University and a degree from a junior college in communications. I couldn't get a job, so I was depressed, and I was about ready to give up and go to law school and say, I'll go to the University of Houston if I can get in, because I was starving. I was making very little money as a radio reporter in Houston. And it's funny how life is. I met a woman at an audition who had gone to Columbia University in New York, the graduate school of journalism, the best journalism school in the world. And I told her my story, and she said, John, don't give up. You have such a passion for journalism. Don't give up. Don't go to law school. You'll be a terrible lawyer. If you're going to go back to graduate school in journalism, get a master's. It's a 1-year program. And if you want, I'll write a letter of recommendation. And she did, and I got in. And I said, great, how am I going to pay for it now? I went to New York. I took a cheap flight. I met with their financial aid people. They gave me a fellowship that paid for all of my studies at Columbia. But just trying and pushing and saying, I need it. And so, like the Beverly Hillbillies, I packed up a U-Haul trailer and I moved to New York City and loved it. Loved working in New York. I met people in the business there. And right out of Columbia, I got a job in Chicago, which is unheard of. You don't start in Chicago. You start in McAllen, Texas, in television. So I did. I was very lucky. And I did one of the first stories that I ever wanted to do there was about immigration. And it's funny that the story is still a hot-button issue today. Congress and President Obama working on a comprehensive immigration bill. They still haven't been able to iron that out. And even back then, 30 years ago, there I was. I wanted to do a story for my local station in Chicago about what are the push factors that make people in Mexico risk their lives, leave their families behind, mostly young men, swim across the Rio Grande, go across the desert in Arizona to come get a job here as a dishwasher for very little money, or a roofer in a strange land. How desperate must they be? So I told my news director in Chicago, let me go to Mexico and pretend that I'm just another immigrant from Mexico. I'll speak only Spanish. And this is cool because only I could do the story as a Mexican American, right? So he said, okay, go do the story, go undercover. So I went to Mexico actually just across the border, and I pretended to be just another Mexican citizen trying to get into the US. I told my friends, I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to go undercover. I'm going to pose as a Mexican. To which they said, it's not going to take a lot of acting, You speak Spanish, you look Mexican, you're in. So but I pretended to be a Mexican citizen, right, trying to get into the U.S. And I spoke no English, and I spoke only Spanish. And I had a hidden camera in the church steeple documenting my search for a coyote, a smuggler. These are the people who for $300, and he did, I found one, sold me a fake birth certificate and a fake Social Security card, and then he said, tonight, meet me here on the border, on the river, and we'll cross the border on an inner tube at 7 p.m. I said, okay. So then I had to get in my rental car and go drive across the bridge to Texas, right, which is just across the water there. And I met with the camera crew. My camera crew, they're filming. I said, okay, guys, I'm going to cross here tonight at 7, hide in the bushes, on the Texas side, the banks of the Rio Grande, and I'll be crossing then. I said, okay. Then I get in my rental car, go back to Mexico, and I had to stash the rental car, my Lincoln Town car, because well, he would never buy this, right? My smuggler, what are you doing? So I leave the car, I put my clothes in a little plastic bag, and I meet up with the smuggler, the coyote, who then takes me to the banks of the river. And he could have done anything, because they know, these smugglers, that you've been saving, these immigrants have been saving all their lives for this crossing. So you've got some money. It's easy to rip us off, beat you up, or leave you for dead along the banks of the river. Fortunately, I had a decent coyote, a decent smuggler who didn't do that. He puts me on an inner tube, and I floated across the Rio Grande to the Texas side, all captured on hidden camera. And I didn't stop there. I got on a bus, and I journeyed all the way back to Chicago, because remember, I was doing this for the Chicago station. And I got a job as a dishwasher at a Greek restaurant in Chicago, where the owner of this restaurant had not paid. He had 7 other Mexican workers, and he had not paid them in 13 weeks. And every time they complained, he would say, hey guys, you get to sleep here in the basement. You get to eat all the food you want. If you keep bitching about this, he said, if you keep complaining about this, I'll call immigration, just have you deported, which happens today. Our immigration policy is in such disarray that people are hiding. It's like a cat and mouse game. They're an invisible workforce, in broad daylight. So there they were with nowhere to go, with no money. They just slept in the basement and kept working every day. So I got a job there as a dishwasher from this guy, speaking only Spanish. So I'm washing dishes by day, and at night I slept in the basement with the rest of the guys. I still wonder what they must have thought, because in the middle of the night I pull out a little handy camera, and I start interviewing them in Spanish about their lives. And they told me how difficult things were and how this guy was ripping them off and had them as virtual slaves in the basement. So the next day, I come back to work, this time wearing a suit, speaking fluent English, with a camera crew behind me. And I remember we had to chase the owner of the restaurant through the parking lot, asking him questions. The story got on the air, the story of my journey across the river, the story of me washing dishes, and it was all put on the air on Channel 2 News in Chicago. And the day after it aired, the U.S. government moved in and shut down the restaurant, got the Mexican workers their money and temporary visas to stay in this country. And I knew. And I knew then that those were the kinds of stories that I was uniquely qualified to report and bring to an audience that they might not get otherwise. I see journalism as a big, dark room. Imagine this conference hall, pitch black, dark. You can't see your hand in front of you. And the journalist is the person with the light or the candle in this room who can illuminate the darkest corners of this room, to illuminate injustice or corruption or human rights violations. It's a great responsibility to have, and a powerful one and an important one. Those are the kinds of stories that I wanted to do from then on. I'd won my first Emmy in Chicago, and then ABC News was looking for someone to go cover Central America with Peter Jennings, for Peter Jennings. So I was hired to work out of the Miami Bureau in New York and in Florida, and then spent 10 years in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Panama, during all the wars in those regions. And it's really funny to me now, looking back, the irony. Here was this kid who used to get punished for speaking Spanish in school, right? I get hired in network television at ABC News precisely because I speak Spanish to go cover Latin America. I loved it. I worked with Peter Jennings. Wasn't he the best? We miss him even to this day. I remember one time I was down in Central America, and I had an interview set up with the president of Nicaragua. And I called New York, and I said, great. I was a brand new reporter. I was like 26 years old, rookie reporter. And I called Peter Jennings, who's this very intimidating, he's like James Bond in New York. He was so cool, And I called him, and I said, I've got a story. I've got a great exclusive interview with the president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega. And he goes, wow, wonderful. You're on the air tonight. Well, then later, an hour later, I get a call from the president's office in Nicaragua saying the interview is off. The president did not want to do the interview after all. So now I'm shaking in my boots. I got to call New York and tell them that what I promised them, tell Peter Jennings that what I promised them wasn't going to happen. So I half expected Peter to yell at me, to fire me. I don't know what he was going to do. But he said something that really surprised me, and I carry with me to this very day. He said, John, there will be times, young man, when this happens in your life again. People promise you something that they don't deliver. Remember this, he said, don't worry so much about talking to the movers and the shakers of the world. Talk to the moved and the shaken. In other words, talk to the real people, right? He says politicians, the presidents of corporations, they can always gather the press and get their message out. They can always issue a press release. They can always call a news conference, right, to get their message out. But the real people, the peasants, the campesinos, the poor, the victims of war, the victims of hurricanes, they don't have access to the media. So your job, he said, should be to get out there and talk to those real people, to the people who are moved and shaken by decisions of government and war. And I carry that with me today. I spent 10 glorious years all over Latin America, and then my dream came true. I wanted to work for 2020 like Geraldo, and I got an opportunity to do that when I was in Colombia, South America. I was covering a story about the presidential elections in Colombia. It turned out to be not much of a story in Bogota, Colombia. But what I did see were kids on the streets of Bogota running around sniffing glue. Little kids, like 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, sniffing glue in their sleeves. They would hide a bottle of glue right inside their sleeves. And then at night, they would open the manhole covers on the streets of the capital and go down there. And I asked the woman who works for us, I said, who are those kids? She goes, oh, they're called gamines, street urchins, runaways, castaways. They're kids nobody wants. They're thieves, she says. By day, they rip off watches from tourists and necklaces and earrings, and then they run into the sewers where they live. And I said, they live in the sewers? She goes, yeah. I said, is anyone trying to help them? She goes, no. Well, there's one man who's trying to help them. He's a wealthy industrialist. His name is Jaime Jaramillo. And he says he makes $500,000 a year exploring for oil for American oil companies in Latin America. But at night, he says he can't go to sleep knowing that his fellow countrymen, the youngest of them, children, live in these conditions in the sewers. Because this is their dark world down there. The kids feel safe down there. That's where the cops won't go after them. And it was true. The military and the cops were afraid to go into the dungeons, the belly. Can you imagine living in the sewer system that services 20 million people in Bogota, Colombia? So she said, what the cops do, though, they won't go down there, but they open the manhole covers and they pour gasoline down there and they throw a match to try to burn these kids out. And Jaime Jaramillo, this hero, he has pictures if you want to go meet him. So I went, and sure enough, there's this guy with a little ramshackle shack. He's trying to start an orphanage for these kids, 300 of whom live in the sewers. And he showed me an album of pictures of these children with melted faces, some of them, from the fires that the cops and the military had set. He had pulled out 6 of them, but there were, again, almost 300 more still there. And I said, will you take us down there to tell the story? And he said, yes. So I called New York right away. Here was my big chance to get on 2020, right? I wasn't one of the regular correspondents on 2020. I was just reporting for the evening news. But here was a big story, and I knew it was more than a 2-minute piece for the evening news. It was more like a documentary. So I called the producer of Primetime, actually. It was Primetime Live, and Rick Kaplan. And I said, Rick, he was at home on a Sunday night. He would also be very mean, and I was afraid that he would not take kindly to my interrupting a Sunday night. So I did. And he said, John, what is the story? I said, children, they live in the sewers. He goes, you got 30 seconds to sell me the story. So I told him. He said, you got 30 more seconds. And And I told him the rest of the story, and he said, look, if you're crazy enough to sell me a story and going to the sewers to do this piece, who am I to say no? And we did. And we told this great, amazing story. We journeyed into the sewers for a week with Jaime Jaramillo, and we saw the children, 300 of them. And we met an infant that had been born 6 weeks old to a 16-year-old girl, had been born just 6 weeks before. Can you imagine starting life in the sewers? We filmed everything down there, and we brought the story back to New York and put it on primetime live. And the day after it aired, American viewers like yourselves sent in $1 million in donations to Jaime Jaramillo, and he opened the orphanage that he was dreaming of opening called Los Niños de los Andes, the Children of the Andes, and he pulled everyone out of the sewer. The kids are now taking tennis lessons in Florida and skiing in Colorado. But it was a happy ending. Again, the incredible power of the media and that camera when it's used right. You know, we don't always do it right, and we often are telling stories about, you know, Justin Bieber and Lindsay Lohan, and we get caught up with the Kardashians and all that. But when we do it right, and when we do stories that matter, that's where we shine as the media in this country. And that story won another Emmy, and then I went to the Amazon, and I did the Yanomamo Indian tribe there, and then I went to Haiti, where I did a piece on children who are forced to work on sugarcane plantations, kidnapped in Haiti, and then work at in the Dominican Republic next door at plantations, sugar that then we buy as American consumers, not knowing that it's harvested by virtual slaves. That won another Emmy. And finally, they said at ABC, why don't you join Primetime Live? But it took forever to get there. So there's a lesson there in perseverance. Then I've traveled the world. After that, I was able to do stories in Israel on suicide bombers. I interviewed Fidel Castro. I went to Vietnam. And I just had a wonderful time working for both the magazine shows, 2020 and Primetime. But it's really ironic that despite all those awards, the story that I get more notoriety for is What Would You Do? The piece that, I guess because it's my own show, and I do it by myself, and I created it 8 years ago. We thought we would run out of ideas. We've done 500 different scenarios. I can't go to a restaurant now without people saying, all right, where are the cameras? What are you doing here? I can't. It's the story, the show that asks the question, if you see something that's troubling, it's like a candid camera of ethics. And we create a dilemma with actors. And the show that asks the question, if you see something that's disturbing to you, and that little voice in the back of your brain says, do something, do you step in or do you step away? And I brought a clip of the show. You want to see one of my favorites? Good. This one is about homelessness. What would you do if you're at a restaurant, somebody brings in a homeless guy to feed him, and the bartender kicks him out? So Tim, if you roll the tape, we can take a look at this piece and then talk about it.
They are those among us with the least. Almost 500,000 people who call the streets home. Their meals, whatever they can find, whatever they are given.
Can you help me out, get something to eat?
What would you do if you saw a good Samaritan give a homeless man $20 for a bite to eat,
So get whatever you want, okay?
only to see him tossed back to the curb the second she leaves?
It's bad for business. I can't let you sit in here.
A man denied service simply because he's homeless. Today, we've brought our hidden cameras to the streets of Lynbrook, New York, and McQuaid's restaurant. Of course, both Tracy and Kevin are actors, and the bartender, Jeremy,
It's not your money. Get out of here.
he's definitely an actor. Everyone at this bar knows it, except this man, and our hidden cameras are rolling.
Oh, wow, it's nice in here.
Hi, this is a friend of mine. Do you have a menu or something he can look at? Just get it whatever you want, okay? Here's $20.
It's really, really nice.
Right away, he takes notice.
Take care, okay?
Thank you so
I have
much.
to get back to work.
But as soon as Tracy leaves, Jeremy has a change of heart.
Listen, man,
They have places that you can go and you can get it like a soup kitchen or something.
I'm a paying customer. Look, I mean, I got $20.
That's not your money. I don't want you to bother these paying customers.
I'm not bothering anybody.
Okay.
Am I bothering you?
Then why don't you leave? He's being polite.
Perhaps, but for Oleg Babsky, this is about more than manners.
Yeah, but you took his $20.
Not his $20.
His $20, you gave it to him for him to eat. I heard it.
Okay, but if I give this 20 back to him, what's he gonna do?
Whatever he wants to do, it's his money.
He's gonna go buy liquor.
He wanted to eat. That's what he's looking for.
We've barely begun here, but already a bold move.
Who are you calling?
Police.
You're calling the police on me?
Yeah.
He makes it clear to Jeremy it's meal or no deal.
Give him back the 20.
Thank you.
Not everyone is quite so welcoming.
Uh-oh. We got a homeless guy outside.
But now the homeless guy is inside.
Do you have a menu that I can look at?
These two women don't want a homeless man seated anywhere near them.
These ladies, and I can smell you too, you smell.
And when Jeremy intervenes, they offer an alternative.
He's bothering you, right?
But let him take something to go to eat.
But he shouldn't sit here, right?
No.
I'll be outside, okay, sir?
Sorry about that, lady.
No, it's fine. Right when the kid be smelled.
Hope that didn't ruin your appetite.
No.
Tough day for Kevin. These next two men also give him the cold shoulder.
Am I bothering you guys? I'm just trying to get something to eat.
These guys work, right? They work all their lives, they pay for their food.
They won't even look our homeless man in the face.
Excuse me.
Please don't get involved here.
Yeah.
You can't. We don't own the place.
Imagine you're down on your luck.
Sir,
Help a guy out.
Sir, mind your own business.
Thank you, guys.
With his pleas falling on deaf ears, we tell Kevin to leave.
Sorry, guys. You feed him once, you feed him twice, then there's 20 guys sitting here.
Absolutely.
They agree with Jeremy. Why?
I think it was wrong for a lady to walk in here, bring a homeless guy in here. If that's her friend, take the money and buy a sandwich somewhere.
But not here.
Wrong place.
Wrong place. And as this next man walks in, things only get worse.
Run him through the dishwasher in the back.
Yeah. Just want to get a little bit of food.
Don't cough on everything.
Sorry.
Along with Jeremy, he literally laughs at Kevin's misfortune.
Can I please get a sandwich?
No.
Oh my God. Give the guy a couple of croutons that are on the floor in the kitchen or something.
I'm a paying customer, man.
Here's the thing. I don't work at a soup kitchen. I work in a bar, okay? When you go...
It seems like he couldn't care less about our homeless man. But then he realizes there's more at stake here.
Can you give me my money back then, please?
Confiscated.
I'm not going to give you the money back.
Give the guy his money. You got to give him his money back at least. If he gets caught somewhere else, whatever.
You going to buy booze with this?
No.
Now watch what happens when Kevin leaves the restaurant.
I just don't think homeless people should be allowed in bars, you know? How did he end up here? He wasted his money.
Well, I mean, we don't know that. We don't know that.
That's true.
I mean, he looks like a decent guy.
A decent guy. And as it turns out, so is Anthony Gambino.
Do me a favor, make the guy a sandwich and put it on my bill, all right?
Make him a sandwich and put it on? Okay.
Kevin, you're still standing by out there, right?
Yeah.
This guy said he just wants to buy you a sandwich.
You're kidding me. That guy?
What kind of sandwich should I get him? Turkey burger?
Turkey burger. Nah, he needs a little something more than that.
More than that?
Yeah, that's for Weight Watchers. Get him the short skirt steak tacos.
A lot of protein in that?
100%.
And now Anthony, a man who seconds ago was insulting Kevin, hand delivers his meal.
Hungry? Here you go, pal.
Serious? Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. Enjoy.
Before he buys him a round of drinks, time to introduce ourselves.
Started off joking with the guy.
Yeah, I was messing around with him. Just trying to rile him up a little bit on his first day.
And then you wind up doing something that totally surprised us.
You know, I've had some hard times in my life, and, you know, other people were there for me, you know, so I try and do the same thing.
Paying it forward. This next man understands that concept all too well, as soon as he sees Kevin on the street.
Thanks, bud.
Look, you can just sit right here.
Seconds later, Kevin is seated right next to him.
I want you to bother anybody. I don't want you to bother this nice
He didn't bother me.
Thank you.
Why don't you have some soup? If you've never been there, you don't know what it's like.
Well, I work, you know.
Yeah, we all work. All of us have had their times.
Can I get like a glass of water? Just water?
You want the free thing on the menu?
A small request that leads to a touching moment.
Thank you.
Now you're making him give you his drink.
No, don't worry about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
To your health.
To yours too.
Thanks.
Better times.
But from Jeremy, the insults just keep getting worse.
Sure, there's a hose out there somewhere.
You don't have to be cruel, man.
Want me to be cruel? Get out of here. Hope you enjoyed your water.
Why'd you take the money, buddy?
You know what he's going to do? He's going to buy drugs and alcohol with you.
He may, but you can't take that money from him. You take that money from him and you'll steal it, and I will make sure that you get arrested for it.
Why are you defending a homeless guy?
Because you're a prick.
Kevin leaves.
Sorry if it upset you. I hope I did the right thing.
No, you didn't.
And Arnie Gerber is full of emotion.
Think I was wrong?
Absolutely. Completely wrong. Really? You never have been in bad shape. You never have you needed help. You never had anything happen to you that you wish you didn't or you wish you could get out. Well, we don't know what that happened to this.
It's a message that's very personal to Arnie.
And you said to him, haven't you ever been through hard times?
Haven't we all? Well, everybody's been through hard times. And we survive them in some way. And if somebody helps you and gives you a push-up, fine.
Almost half of the people we met this day did just that. They spoke up for a hungry stranger down on his luck. Heroes? They don't think so.
Heroic is the guy that landed the plane in the Hudson River. That's heroic. And wouldn't anybody else do the same thing?
All right, that's amazing, huh? Just love that. Yeah, thank you. I love that guy, Arnie. He walks in, he's dressed in white hair. He looks like God stepped down from the heavens. You never know who's going to walk in the door, and that's why the show works sometimes. You know, it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said so eloquently, he reminded us that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And that's what Would You Do is all about. You know, some of the stories we do are kind of fun, right? We do pieces about, did you see the bike theft scenario where we tied a bicycle at a park to a pole, and then we had a kid pretend he was stealing it. And we told the actors, if you're stealing, let people know you're stealing it, right? If they ask you, you say, yeah, I'm stealing the bike. So we had a white kid do it, a 22-year-old kid with wire cutters and hacksaw cutting the chain. And when he's cutting, and people are jogging by, walking their dogs, pushing their strollers, and people would stop and ask him. And he said, yeah, the bike's been here a few days. I need a bike. This one's free. I'm going to take it. And no one called, with this white actor, no one called the 911. No one called the police. They just shook their heads. Then we did it. We switched actors, and then we had an African-American guy, the same dress, same age, with the wire cutters and the hacksaw. Within 4 seconds, when he started cutting the chain, people not only surrounded him like a posse, but they called 911, and they took his picture with their cell phone saying, we got you. Even the black guys like, John, this is ridiculous. The white guy got away with it. And then we switched actors again, and we had a very attractive young woman with her blonde hair blowing in the wind, wearing short shorts and a tight T-shirt with the hacksaw and the wire cutters. Men helped her steal the bike. They helped her. They helped her steal the bike. There was this one middle-aged couple who, on their bicycles, and the wife goes, honey, you know, she's stealing that bike. And he goes, yeah, but she's a damsel in distress. She needs help. So he's pulling the bike out, and of course the actress is going along with it, saying, "Oh, you're so strong. How do you?" And he's like, "Thank you." And then she's asking him, "Do you see the cops around? Any cops?" So now he's looking for the police. Now the guy is an accomplice to this theft. I still wonder what that drive home with his wife must have been like once we told them it was "What would you do?" But one of my other favorites was, what would you do if you see a person walking down the street and then they collapse right in front of you? And we did it in Newark, New Jersey by the train station at 8 in the morning, where people were in a rush to catch their train and to get to work or to school, right? So we had a woman, about in her 40s, well-dressed, like a businesswoman, who suddenly collapses. She's an actress, she's a stunt artist, right? She collapses and she pretends, it could be a heart attack, it could be she fainted. No one knows. It was a very cold day, too. Every time she collapsed and we did our little experiment, people would stop, put a coat over her, call 911, get an ambulance there. Of course, they don't come because we tell them that it's part of the show. But everyone stepped in with this woman time and again and again. It was pretty impressive. We said, wow. Well, what if we switch actors now? We make it a homeless guy, someone like the man here, but older and disheveled and dirty and bearded, and he's holding a beer can in his hand. When we did it with that actor, 88 people went by and no one stopped. People are stepping over him. One woman made the sign of the cross and said, "Oh, it's a beautiful view of Newark," and kept on walking. So we were blown away. It was like, wow. And we were about ready to give up, and we basically saying, well, I guess if you're homeless, no one will stop. If you're a well-dressed businesswoman, people will stop. And we're about ready to give up when into the frame of our picture, because the camera was hiding right in front in a van over the sidewalk, we see we hear it, the tapping of a walking cane coming into the scene, and it's an African-American woman who is partially paralyzed because she had a stroke, and she's homeless herself. Of course, she doesn't have a cell phone, so she starts asking people walking by, "Excuse me, do you have a cell phone? Can you call 911? Can someone call for this man?" 22 more people go by, and nobody stops. This beautiful woman then looks up to the heavens and just kind of almost curses the heavens as if to say, "God, why do you allow this to happen?" So she stumbles over, because she's partially paralyzed, and she bends over and takes the beer can out of the actor's hand and struggles to put it in the trash can, as if to give the man a little bit of dignity, right? Thinking maybe people will stop. 18 more people walk by, and nobody's stopping. And then she bends over again, and she says to the man, we could hear this because he was wearing a microphone, and she says to him, "Sir, I don't know your name, but my name is Linda, and I'm going to call you Billy." And Billy, she says, she's whispering to him, "Don't you worry, I'm going to stay here until help comes." And then finally a woman, and usually, by the way, it's women who step into the scenes, a woman stops and she calls 911. And we break the scene. I come out with the cameras, and there's a lot of excitement, and people are relieved that it was only "What would you do?" that it wasn't real, right? So, but in the hubbub of all that, all the excitement, our hero, Linda Hamilton was her name, she walks away and disappears. So we never saw her again. And we put the "What would you do" scenario on the air a couple of weeks later. The day after it aired, people were just so responsive and calling us emails, and calling us on the phone, leaving messages on my office phone, saying, "Who was that?" Asking, "Who was that woman?" The viewers created a Facebook page for her called "Touched by an Angel," touched by Linda Hamilton. And they started raising money for her. So now there's $8,000 that have been collected, and they wanted me to go find her and give it to her, of course. So we had our staff go for 2 weeks. They searched in train stations and liquor stores and homeless shelters with her picture saying, "Have you seen this woman?" And we found her 2 weeks later. And so my producer said, "John, get out there and show her the piece." So I met her on the steps of a church because she's homeless. And I showed her the story, and it was so touching. She goes, "Hey, that's you." I said, "Yes, I'm the host of the show." And she goes, "And that's me." I said, "Yes, people are calling you a hero, Linda, for what you did." So we gave her the $8,000. We opened up a bank account for her. We gave her medicine. She qualified for Medicaid and Medicare that she medicine she wasn't getting, and we got her a place to live. And the most exciting thing for her, we got her her own cell phone. So like a little 8-year-old girl, she was jumping up and down. And I said, Linda, now you can call if you ever see anything bothersome. But at the end of the day, I said to her, Linda, people calling you an angel, a hero, are you? She goes, no, John, that's not the case. Let me tell you what happened. She says, I think God put me on that corner, on that street, on that day when you were filming to teach people a lesson. I've been there. And the lesson, she says, should be to walk in other people's shoes. Try to connect with them in that way. So this morning, I leave you with that message. When that little voice in the back of your head says, there's something wrong here, do something. Speak up for someone who doesn't have a voice. Do what Linda Hamilton did. Here's a woman who is partially paralyzed. She's homeless herself. And she stepped in to help her fellow man, not because she was going to be on television, because she didn't know that. Not because she was going to get $8,000, because she didn't know that. She did it because, as we say in Spanish, her corazón, her heart, told her it was the right thing to do. Thank you for having me here. It really has been a pleasure. Really, really a pleasure. Thanks so much. Thank you. Have a great conference. It's over, huh? Thank you. All right. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, sweetie.
Great, thank you.
Great meeting you. Do I go away or do I go back?
One more time for John Quinones, please. He is going to be available for a book signing outside in front of the escalator out here. So when we're finished, make sure you go get in line if you would like to meet him and have your book signed. At the beginning of the week, or on Wednesday, I gave you a challenge. What was that challenge? I wanted you to go out and I wanted you to get inspired. Did you get inspired? So now what are you going to do with that inspiration that you got? Take it back. What are you going to do with it when you take it back? Going to share it, or who are you going to share it with? Teachers and kids, good. That's what I want. I want you to inspire your kids. That's my motivation for this week. This has been an amazing week for me. It's been 2 years worth of planning, and everything has gone super well. And I've had lots of help in making sure that that plan came together. So I had the TCEA board, of course, they helped out. But I also had a steering committee that helped out. And if you're in here and you were in the steering committee, will you please stand? Is there anybody left? There's a few. Thank you. We also had volunteers. If you were a volunteer this week, will you stand up? Thank you. And we also had presenters. If you presented, stand up. That's what TCEA is all about. We can't do this by ourselves. There's no way that the amount of us can go around and present in rooms and volunteer and put everything together. It takes you to make this happen. So I want to thank you for that. And you're going to have a chance to do that again next year. If you didn't do it this year, you can get in on the action for next year. So it is my privilege to introduce next year's VP of Convention, Mr. Bill Lewis.
How awesome was that? He was awesome. All right. Hope you had fun this year. Next year, we have to one up, and that's our challenge from year to year. I want to invite you back the week of February 2nd, 2015, to learn from thousands of your closest friends. We will expand our academy programs, and we're going to have new offerings such as an ESL Academy. We're going to create maker spaces and many more playgrounds. TCEA 2015, anyone, anytime, any device, learn anywhere.
Ready?
Learn anytime. Always connected. This is TCEA 2015. Are you ready?
So make your plans now. But if you can't wait until next February, a whole 361 days from now, then let me invite you to a couple other events. This summer, we have Tots and Technology, which will again be in Galveston during June 15th through 17th. This is a great way. Bring your family. The beach is across the way. You can enjoy one of the TCA benefits of a discount to Schlitterbahn, or they can, while you are learning. And then you can join them at night. How's that? Then the second event we have is in October. It is our System Admin Conference. It will be here in Austin at the new building, so October 23rd and 24th. So if you're into the boxes and wires, or you want to know more about the boxes and wires, this is the conference to go to be geeked out. And then we are an affiliate, TCEA is an affiliate with ISTE, International Society for Technology and Education. And their summer conference this year, convention, will be in Atlanta, home of the Braves and the Coca-Cola Museum, but from June 28th through July 1st. And we are inviting you to join us while some of us are there, and just expanding and meeting more people from outside. I just want to say thank you again, and we're going to turn it over one last time to our dear sweet friends Holly and Dwight.